speaker, and I will read you his introduction. Russ is a retired military officer, having served 27 years on active duty with the United States Air Force, retiring at the rank of colonel. Upon retirement, Russ grew a profitable franchise operation in Clearwater and sold the territory in 2012. He is currently helping military veterans transition from active service to meaningful civilian careers as the University of South Florida Office of Veteran Services Coordinator for Student Veteran Employment. His goal is to match talented military veterans with talent-seeking employers. Russ is an Advanced Communicator Silver and Advanced Leader Bronze. He is a member of Suncoast Toastmasters in Tampa and Top of the Morning Toastmasters in Oldsmar. He has been a Toastmaster since 2009 and has served as Vice President of Public Relations and Vice President of Education. He is the current president of Suncoast Club. Now, is that ending 6:30 or is that starting July 1st?
Starting July 1st.
Starting July 1st. You guys can compare notes.
We had our installation ceremony on Tuesday, so I'm in the seat.
Okay. This afternoon, Russ will share his perspective on listening to your dreams, and he will describe how to fulfill those dreams successfully every time, regardless of how challenging they may seem. Please welcome Russ Barnes.
Madam Outgoing President.
Yes, thank you.
I really, really do appreciate having the opportunity to participate in this type of a meeting. It's really so important to look back on what you have accomplished, to understand how the hard work has moved you forward. Because in many cases, the progress is so slow and incremental that you don't really feel it on a daily basis. So at some point you turn around and you say, wow, I've really come a long way. And just to be able to hear the things that you all have done from the officer level and what you have done from the club level is really inspiring. And that's what has gotten me more and more and more involved with Toastmasters over the years, is the inspiration that I get when I go to a Toastmasters meeting. I'm always energized when I go to a meeting. And as I was telling some folks earlier, when I first joined, I went to Suncoast Toastmasters Club, visited, joined, and didn't go to another club for 3 years. And then it just happened that someone asked me to visit a club. I went, and then I went to another one, and then you just begin to see that the energy is at least Florida-wide. I haven't been to a Toastmasters club outside of Florida yet, but I'm looking forward to doing that as well. This is also a great way to set the stage for the upcoming year. And I appreciate it. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Jim?
Jim.
Yes.
I appreciate that you point out how that growth happens, and that when you come and you start in a position like this, it's just, you really don't know. It's scary. It's incredibly scary, but you grow into it. And I heard them say that at the district conference. Somebody said, you grow into it. And that is just incredibly good, and it helps you set the stage for the next year. So I was asked to come here today because several of the members of this club saw me give a presentation at a TLI, and the topic was motivation. I will give that presentation, so those of you who have heard it, maybe you'll get to enjoy it again. But you'll know what's coming, so it may not be quite as it was the first time. But I will give that presentation, but since you've given me a little bit of extra time, I have another one that I'd like to give, that I'd like to start with. And it's one that I put together for the storytelling manual as an advanced project. And I think it's very relevant to the theme of this meeting. I have a good friend who always tells me, I'm big on vision. I say, if you don't have a vision, how do you know where you're going and how you're going to get there? Well, my friend says, it's not the vision that's important, it's the dream. Martin Luther King didn't give a I have a vision speech. He gave a I have a dream speech. And he's right. It's very important to have a dream. So I'd like to start out talking about a guy who had a dream. So picture this. It's the late 1800s, rural South. dirt poor sharecropper named Peter and his wife Kate. They are so poor, they hardly have enough food to eat. Their home is a dilapidated tin roof shack on a hard patch of ground. There's a river runs nearby and a gnarled old apple tree in the backyard. So one night, while Peter is sleeping, he has a dream. An old man comes to him and says, "Peter, you've had a hard life, but you've neither grumbled nor complained, and now I have a mind to do something for you. Tomorrow, I want you to follow the river to the south until you come to an old bridge. Across the river will be a town. Wait patiently on that bridge. Now, nothing may happen on the first day, and nothing may happen on the second day, but if you do not lose courage, someone will come and tell you something that will make you a very wealthy man." Peter woke up. He was super excited. He told his wife Kate about his dream. And he said, "Wouldn't it be something if I followed what the old man told me to do and I actually became a wealthy man?" "Nonsense," said Kate. "Dreams are foolishness." So Peter falls asleep again the next night. And the old man comes again and says, "Peter, why have you not done what I told you? Remember, good fortune will not wait forever. Follow the river to the south. Take heed of what you hear there, and you will be a rich man." Peter woke up and he thought, every intention, following that river, going to find out what it was that that old man told him about. But his wife Kate disillusioned him again and said, "Don't be ridiculous. Sit down, eat your breakfast, and be thankful that you have it." So Peter didn't follow the river again the next day. On the third night, Peter falls asleep, and the old man shows up, and this time he is angry. "You fool! 3 times I have come to you, and I will come no more. Follow the river, listen to what you hear, or you will remain a poor person for the remainder of your days." The old man disappeared. Peter woke up, and this time there was no arguing or scolding that would stop Peter from following what the old man had commanded him to do. He stopped just long enough to put some food in his pocket, and off he went. Peter followed that river for a long time. A very long time. And finally he arrived at the bridge, and across the river was a town. Surely this is where the old man had told him to be. So he took his position on the bridge and he waited. Passers-by came along, stared at him. Some of them spoke, but no one said anything that might lead him to a fortune. So day after day, he stood there. And by the afternoon of the third day, he only had enough food. He had pretty much used up all the food he had. All he had left was a dry crust of bread. So then he began to think, what am I, some kind of an idiot? Standing out on here on this bridge, day after day, because of a dream? I could be home earning a few pennies so at least my wife and I could have some food to eat. Well, across the bridge was a tailor shop. And the tailor was a very curious man. And ever since Peter had arrived, he'd been watching him through his window, wondering, who is that guy? And what is he doing here? By the third day, he couldn't stand it any longer, so he went out to the bridge. "Hello, stranger," he said to Peter. "Hello," replied Peter. "Are you waiting for someone?" said the tailor. "I am, and I am not," replied Peter. "What does that mean?" asked the tailor. "How could you be waiting and not waiting all at the same time?" "Well," said Peter, "I am waiting for someone. but I don't know who he is. I don't know when he'll come. And in fact, I don't know if anyone will come at all. Then he told the tale about his dream and said, I was told to wait on this bridge and someone would come along and tell me something that would make me a rich man. You're a knucklehead, said the tailor. Well, I have dreams too, but I have enough sense not to pay any attention to them. Why, just last week, 3 times, an old man came to me and he said, follow the river north till you come to an old, broken down, dilapidated tin roof shack where a man named Peter lives with his wife Kate. I want you to go around to the backyard and dig underneath the apple tree, and there you'll find a chest full of gold. But do you think I followed such nonsense, said the tailor? Indeed I did not. I stick to my job right here. It enables me to put food on my table, clothes on my back, and a roof over my head. And I suggest that you return where you came from and get to work. And maybe, eventually, you'll be able to afford enough clothes so you don't have to wear those miserable rags that you have on now. And with that, the tailor returned to his shop. So Peter scratched his head and could it be that there's a fortune in my own backyard and I had to come to this town and wait on this bridge to hear about it? So Peter set off for home. And as he walked and thought about the fact that there may be a fortune in his backyard, he moved faster and faster and faster, and eventually he was running. And by the time he got home, he was exhausted and out of breath. He screamed to his wife, Kate, bring me the shovel, and he ran around in the backyard to the apple tree. Now his wife, when she saw him rushing to the house, thought he was completely out of his mind, thought he just totally lost his marbles. But she brings him the shovel, and Peter starts digging beneath that apple tree. And very shortly, he hits something hard. He uncovers this massive wooden chest. When he lifts up the lid, he and his wife can hardly believe their eyes. The chest is just overflowing with gold.
Wow!
The old man was right. Peter followed his dream. And he and his wife, Kate, were able to live a very wealthy life from that point on. So at this point, I would say, yeah, thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. And I thought that was very relevant. I had the opportunity to deliver that speech at my club as part of my advanced communicator manual storytelling. And then I had an opportunity to give it again at a Gavel Club. Is everyone familiar with the Gavel Club?
No.
The Gavel Club is a Toastmasters club in a location where they don't have the opportunity to pay for memberships and all the things that we normally cover as members of Toastmasters, such as the Zephyr Hills Correctional Institute. So it was just an amazing opportunity for me to go and deliver this speech to the members of that club, and they are just as enthusiastic and motivated and excited and capable as we are. They did a super job, and I had an opportunity to do that there, so I wanted to bring that to you as well. And they really took some good messages from that presentation. So that sets the stage for the speech I delivered at the TLI. And this speech has to do with motivation and discipline, because even though Peter had a dream, he had to have motivation to get up and go, and then he had to have the discipline to wait. So several years ago, a friend of mine who travels abroad happened to find this very unique bird. And the bird was unique because it could actually hold a conversation. You could talk about politics, religion, business, sports, you name it. My friend visited several times to make sure that this parrot was for real. And when he realized that it was, he decided to buy it and bring it home. But once he got home with this bird, it became rude and obnoxious, using the most foul language you've ever heard in your life. And this obviously upset my friend. So he told this bird, cease and desist. or you'll be in lots of trouble. Well, the bird took that as permission to become even more outrageous and started calling him names. So my friend at this point was at his wit's end. He grabs the bird by the neck, rips him out of his cage, opens up the freezer door and flings him into the freezer, slams the door. There's kicking and screaming and noise and banging, and looks like the door is going to come off of his hinges, and then it stops. My friend gets a little curious about what's going on. He gets a little nervous because he paid a lot of money for that. Then he gets even more nervous. Finally, after a few minutes, he opens up the freezer door to see what's going on. And the bird steps calmly onto his arm and says to him very politely, "Sir, I apologize for my rude and obnoxious behavior, and I promise you that it will never, ever, ever happen again." Now my friend's a little bit perplexed about this sudden change in behavior, until the bird continues and says, "Sir, may I ask you a question?" To which my friend replies, "Yes, go ahead." "What did the chicken do?" So as you can see, discipline works. The only problem with discipline, though, is it's not sustainable over the long term. Any of you who have tried to sustain a diet for more than a month know how difficult it is to do that with discipline. The food gets boring. It's just difficult. And if you try to sustain some sort of a exercise program for more than a year, it's the same thing. It just gets boring. And so if discipline was so effective at getting things done, then no one would ever have the need for a New Year's resolution. So what I'm going to share with you this afternoon is a guaranteed way to sustain high performance for yourself and for others over long periods of time. And the secret is this: IMAD. Kind of like iPad, but it's IMAD. IMADDE. Internal motivation activates discipline-driven excellence. Internal motivation activates discipline-driven excellence. And I'll use 3 points to show how using motivation is much more effective than relying on discipline. So point number 1 will be, what's point number 1? Point number 1 is, I didn't think of this word. Here we go. You always have to have those.
Yes.
Forcible action. I don't know why that just flew from my brain. But forcible action does not always result in task completion. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is external motivation is not as sustainable as internal motivation. And point number 3 is task completion is always the outcome of internal motivation. So let's talk about point number 1. Let's define the terms. Discipline as a noun is sticking with a task until completion. Discipline as a verb is forcible action aimed at achieving a change in behavior. So task completion, forcible action to achieve a change in behavior. The military effectively uses forcible action programs. The initial training programs, any other training programs that I've gone through on active duty in the military have been challenging both physically and mentally, and they're programs where not everyone graduates. So by the time the program concludes, either Some of the folks have been eliminated by not being able to meet the requirements of the program, or they've self-eliminated because they've determined that this is not for them and they want to go and do something else. So forcible action can only go so far because people have the right to choose and to move on. Those who do succeed have achieved a demonstrated level of proficiency. But when you're using a forcible action program, it is also important not to take that forcible action too far. When I was a lieutenant, I was standing by a soda machine and I had $1, but I needed change. So an airman walks by and I said to the airman, "Do you have change for $1?" So he said, "Sure, buddy," as he reaches into his pocket. And I'm thinking, I'm an officer. And he can tell. I'm in full daily here. It's not as though he doesn't know I'm an officer. So I think it's time and an opportunity for me to do my officerly duty. So I said, "Soldier, is that any way to speak to an officer? Why don't we try that again?
No.
Do you have change for $1?" He popped to attention. He looked me square in my eye and he said, "No, sir." I learned a pretty valuable lesson. So let's talk about point number 2. Point number 2, external motivation does not achieve task completion as well as internal motivation. And again, let's define the terms. External motivation is task completion based on reward or punishment. Internal motivation is task completion based on personal fulfillment. Whenever someone is completing a task because of the reward or the punishment, they'll do just as much as they need to do to either earn the reward or avoid the punishment. But when someone is completing a task because there is personal fulfillment, you can't get them to go home in the evening because they love what they do, they're motivated, they're excited, they're engaged, they're interested. And when you tie that personal fulfillment to the mission of the organization, then you just have an organization that is really going to do incredibly well. Now, several years ago, I was returning from a combat mission, and I was on a cargo airplane, and the pilot was interested in getting going. It was about 2 a.m. We landed in Thule, Greenland, cold outside, freezing cold outside. We were waiting on the sewage truck to come and download the sewage from the airplane so we could be on our way, and it was late. And when it did finally arrive, the airman was taking his time, strolling about, acting like he had nowhere better to be, which he probably did. It was Thule, Greenland. But this agitated the pilot, and he just started getting really upset. So he blasted out of the cockpit, and he starts reading this airman the riot act up and down. And finally, the airman's had enough. And he said, "Sir, I have no stripes, which means I am not making a lot of money. It's 2 a.m. and it's 20 below zero out here. I'm in Thule, Greenland, where there's not a lot to do. And I'm downloading sewage from an airplane. What are you gonna do? Punish me?" Learned another valuable lesson. So the effective use of motivation is really tying it to the why. Why are you doing something? And if as a leader, you can tap into that internal motivation. Why did someone come to work for you, with you? Why are they here? Are they in the right position? Are they doing the right things? Because someone can be really excited when they show up. And if they have a really outgoing personality and you stick them behind a computer all day long and they don't get to talk to anyone, eventually they'll be hating life. Or if you take someone who just loves being behind a computer and that just inspires them to no end, and you put them out there and try to get them into sales, well, they're going to find every reason to try to figure out how to sell from the computer. So tapping into that why is very important, and that's the basis of internal motivation is that why. So point number 3, task completion is always, always, always the outcome. This is a pretty bold statement, but in effect, it's true. Because let's go back to the diet that I mentioned in the very beginning. how difficult it is to sustain a diet. But let's just imagine that you have a relationship with your best friend in the world. I mean, this is the perfect match. You want to spend as much time as you can with this person. You have a beautiful little daughter, precocious, witty, charming, and then you suffer a mild heart attack. And the doctor says, you're going to need to diet, exercise, stop smoking, get your rest. Now these things that have been so difficult to change in your life, all of a sudden, there's this incredible motivation. You want to grow old with your spouse. You want to see your daughter get married so you can dance at her wedding. You want to be able to play with your grandchildren. So now all of a sudden that internal motivation is on a different scale, it's on a different level. So going for a walk 30 minutes every day, eating healthy food, stop smoking, getting your rest, those things take a different perspective for you. It's a very different way of looking at this thing. And you have an internal motivation that says, you know what, I'm making a long-term life plan that I will be able to stay with because I want a long-term life with my wife, husband, and my daughter. So it takes on a very different approach. So that internal discipline is going to guarantee that you complete that task. Now when my children were young, I have 4 sons, they played basketball. And my wife would always say, all the other dads are making their sons go out and shoot 200 jump shots a day. How come you don't do that? And I said, well, basketball is a game and it's supposed to be fun. So when they want to go out and shoot 200 shots a day, I will be more than happy to go out and do that with them. But if they don't want to do it, I'm not going to make them. And there did come a time when they would go out and they would shoot, and when they went out to shoot and they wanted to go out, they would stay out there far more than 200. And I remember one day shooting with my youngest son, and he's shooting and I get the rebound and I pass it back, and he shoots and I get the rebound and I pass it back. And I figured he'd be out there for maybe 15, 20 minutes. Well, 30 minutes went by, 45 minutes went by, an hour went by, an hour and a half went by. The lights, it got dark, the light came on, and he's still shooting. And the only way I was saved is his older brother came in, and he said, I thought we were going to the movies. What are you guys doing out here? But it was his internal motivation that was driving him. So I said, I'll stay out here as long as he wants to stay out here. But it was his internal motivation that was driving him. So focus on identifying your own internal motivation. Focus on identifying the internal motivation of the people that you work with. And I'll tell you, it worked for me. When I was on active duty, that's what I did, and it made my life so easy. Because people would come in, and I had to chase them out at the end of the day, because they just let me finish this up, just let me finish this. And at times, I would have to leave the building, so they would see me leave, so that they knew so I knew they weren't staying because I was staying, and then I'd come back. Don't do that, I'm not going to do that. So, internal motivation activates discipline-driven excellence. So I have one final point. My wife is having an incredibly difficult time with getting my son to do his schoolwork. He wouldn't do his homework, he wouldn't set a study schedule, he was misbehaving in class all the time, so he was always in trouble. This is a true story. I'm envisioning it now. He's 6'5" now. He graduated from Vanderbilt, so you'll see that there's a good ending to this story. So we were pretty much at our wits' end, like the guy with the parrot. We didn't know what to do. Finally, we decided to put him in parochial school. So after his first day of school, he comes home, he grabs a snack, he goes to his room, he studies for several hours. We're thinking, what's going on here? The next day he comes home, he does the same thing. The next day, it's the same thing, and he does this every day for the entire semester. And by the end of the semester, his grades are just incredible. He's doing really well. Teachers are happy. So we decided we need to get to the bottom of this and figure out, well, what happened. So we said to him, we're really, really proud of you. You're doing such great work. But why? What's changed? Do you like the school? Do you like your teachers? Do you like the coursework? What is it that's different? Well, he said to us, when you all dropped me off at school on the first day, and I went through the front door and saw that guy hanging on the plus sign, they were serious.
Yeah.
So internal motivation, discipline-driven excellence. So that was the presentation I gave at the TLI. I was a little more polished at that time, but hopefully you got the message. And the message, the two key messages are, number one, follow your dreams, find out what those are, and tap into that, listen to them. The second one is, look at your internal motivation, tie that. You all have a great club here. And again, I thank you for allowing me to participate in this ceremony.